Hey everybody, Eric Rennie here with Philippe J. Fournier for this week's episode of The Numbers. We are now back in our home locations after a weekend in Winnipeg.
That's right.
How are you feeling now, a few days after taking a trip out west?
Good morning, Eric. Good morning, everybody. It's good to connect back with you, Eric. It was fun going to Winnipeg and meet you in person again. It was a very interesting weekend. I cannot say that I visited as much as I would like. It was also very cold for that weekend in late March in Winnipeg. But it was good also to meet. I went to the Conservative Convention in Calgary, and it's good to meet people who are, members and really involved in the party's workings. And for the NDP, it was the same thing. It was, of course, a smaller event, but it was still pretty big. And Monsieur Lewis comes on top. It was not a surprise. We're going to perhaps go back to our over-unders. I think you won 3-2, if my count is correct, but it was still close. So where would you like to start today? Should we start with the federal polls, or would you want to talk about the NDP stuff first, or where do you want to go?
I think that we can, we'll start with the general picture, I think, first, before we get to some of the leadership results, because obviously we did have that episode that we recorded from the convention floor,
Yes.
went over the first results, and we do have a little bit more data. Some of it was leaked data, which is the best kind of data, so we'll go over that. But yeah, we got some federal polls, and, I'm starting to think about how this... how the next few months are going to shape up, because it does seem like we've been waiting for a couple things. One of them is, will Mark Carney and the Liberals get their majority government? It seems like they could be as close to it as within, 11 days if they win the 3 by-elections on April 13th.
Yeah.
We have Pierre Poilievre, who I think is starting to feel his way forward in terms of how he's going to approach the Carney government, what kind of opposition he's going to take to it. Kind of shifting a little bit of the approach that he took with Justin Trudeau. And then we got Avi Lewis and the NDP. Their leadership race is over. So it does feel like we are really starting it for real, I would say, the next little phase in politics. So yes, we did get a series of federal polls. We got 5 new polls this week. We got polls from Abacus, from Léger, from Liaison, from Nanos, and we got a release from Spark as well. Do you want to take us through the numbers?
Okay, so let's start with Léger for the National Post. Okay, so this is important to state that Léger fielded this weekend. So as the NDP convention was going on, in the poll, they still have Don Davies as the interim leader of the NDP. So this is our line in the sand for the NDP. The numbers, 48% for the Liberals, 34% for Conservatives, so a 14-point lead, which is an identical 14-point lead as last month's Léger release. It was 49-35 back then. NDP 6 up 1 point, so no change. Bloc Québécois 7 up 2 points. A little change, a little improvement over there. If we look at the main regionals, in Ontario, and I think this is the big one, with a sample of over 500 respondents, Liberals 54, Eric.
Yeah.
Conservative 34. Now the 54 is not that surprising. They had 49% of the vote, and so could they have gained 5 points since then, and little statistical fluctuations? Yeah, but 34 for the Conservatives seems really low considering the NDP is at 7. So it's not like the NDP has gained much ground here. In Quebec, and that number matters a lot, Eric, because of the Terrebonne by-election. This is the last Léger poll before the Terrebonne by-election. 46 for the Liberals, 31 for the Bloc, 15 for the Conservatives, and 5 for the NDP. And if we look at quickly British Columbia, it's a smaller sample, but a statistical tie, 45 Conservative, 42 Liberal. What do you make of these numbers from Léger? We'll get to the others, but Léger, I think, is always the big one. So what do you make of these numbers, Eric?
Well, we didn't see, as you said, much of a change in the actual trend line. I think it was both the Liberals and the Conservatives dropped a point, which doesn't really matter, but it shows that things are kind of holding steady. A big lead in Ontario. Now, we did see some other polls of the 5 that we got last week. We had a couple that did have sizable Liberal leads, double-digit leads for the Liberals in Ontario, so 20 might be on the high side. But certainly, that's what helps them get to 200 plus in the seat count. And BC, I think, BC is a little bit of the wild card right now, which it often is because of the smaller samples. But here it's a 3-point lead for the Conservatives. Again, small sample. But in the polls that we saw released over the last bit, we got everything. We were running from a 3-point Conservative lead, as in this Léger poll, to a 24-point Liberal lead in the Spark poll. So we don't really know what things are going on in BC, but it does on the whole still seem to suggest that the Liberals have an advantage there, which is kind of like the pillars that they've been building really since the Trudeau years, but especially after the result in the last election. Good result in Ontario, good result in Quebec, nearly sweep Atlantic Canada, and British Columbia being pretty solid for them. So those 4 pillars are still very strong for the Liberals at the moment.
Go back to British Columbia here, and we discussed this last month. 7% for the NDP in this Léger poll. Now, Léger has had the NDP a bit lower than the average in the past year, but they haven't been wrong either on the NDP in the election, right? So if this is accurate, that means that the NDP has lost half of its support in BC compared to last April. That's tough.
Yeah. Especially because they didn't win any of their seats by huge margins, right? So
No. All of them were pretty close. Vancouver East was better, but it was still much closer, too close for comfort, as we say. Same poll, Léger. Satisfaction. Are you satisfied or dissatisfied with the Carney government? 57% satisfied. 34% dissatisfied. So this is a plus 23. Last month it was a plus 26. So small erosion, but still well within the margin of error. What's interesting in the satisfaction numbers, Eric, is that it's at 50% almost, or over 50% everywhere. So Atlantic Canada 60%, Quebec 58%, Ontario 58%. Prairies 48%, but it's only 39% dissatisfied in the prairies, so it's still a net positive. Alberta 54% satisfied and 55% in BC. These are strong numbers for a government that it's supposed to be entering its 9th year or 10th year soon.
11th.
11th? Oh my God! Yeah,
my friend.
That's right. So, God. Okay, yeah, time flies. But so. This is high for the Liberals, and I gotta say I did not think that blip that started in mid-January would last until April. Like usually these waves last a couple of months and then it's erodes. We talked about the Liberal plateau last week. It looks like the surge has ended, but if it's where the Liberals will sit for a little while in the mid, sometimes high 40s, this is very comfortable territory for the government, and it changes the dynamic. Also, you mentioned Poilievre, and I will give you the mic here, but for Poilievre this morning, calling to end taxes on gas and calling to cancel the TGV that's supposed to be from Quebec to Toronto, high-speed rail. These are things that you go all in on big ideas, or some people would disagree with them, but they're big things. They're not just day-to-day management of the government. So perhaps this spread between the two is so big that the Conservative says we have to think big. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's what I was saying before, that it seems like they are taking a bit of a different approach, taking some big swings on this, on a few issues, trying to get at the cost of living issue, when it comes to the high-speed rail thing, just calling it, that it was going to be a boondoggle, before like anything has even been kind of spent on it. Maybe just setting some goalposts for later on to be like, told you so, because you know what? Big government projects tend not to come in under budget. Let's just put it that way. So yeah, I do think that we're starting to see the Conservatives trying to feel their way forward. We saw it with the tone from Pierre Poilievre that has changed a little bit, where he's trying to be on a bit more different platforms and take a little bit more of a different approach. So I think they are trying to figure out how they can get in and kind of wedge Mark Carney in some way, because they haven't been successful so far.
Yeah, that's true.
focused a lot on the Léger poll because it is the most recent one, and Léger is one of our favorite pollsters, of course, based on their track record over the last little while. But some of the other polls we got this week, I'll go through them a little bit more quickly. We got an Abacus poll that was published, I think, over the weekend. 44 for the Liberals, 37 for the Conservatives, 9 for the NDP. We had the usual trackers from Liaison and Nanos. Liaison showed 45 for the Liberals, 33 for the Conservatives, 9 for the NDP. Nanos was 47 for the Liberals, 32 for the Conservatives, 11 for the NDP. And Spark had 46% for the Liberals, 30 for the Conservatives, and 11 for the NDP. So we got some pretty broad consensus, right? Because we got the Liberals between 44 and 48. We got the Conservatives between 30 and 37, the NDP between 6 and 11. While some people might be like, whoa, that's 5-7 points between some of those parties, it's a pretty healthy variation, right? We don't want to see pollsters all saying that everybody's within 1 or 2 points because that's statistically not likely. But yeah, it does seem like we are in this new kind of holding pattern with the Conservatives in the mid to, let's just say mid-30s.
Mid-30s, yeah.
And the Liberals in the mid-40s. And the NDP somewhere high single digits, maybe on average. We'll put it that way. Yeah. So that's kind of the starting point for this next little phase that we're entering into, with Avi Lewis coming on, seeing what kind of impact he's going to have. I was interested to see, some of the interviews that he gave in the first days. Sadly, his father, Stephen Lewis, former Ontario NDP leader, he passed away. Which Lewis had mentioned it at the convention that his father was not doing well. It was kind of expected that it was going to happen in the short term, but certainly our condolences and sympathies to friends and family of Mr. Lewis. But this is really where he's starting. And what's really kind of fascinating about it is that he's starting more or less where the party had been in the last election. They're no better. No. They've gotten no really real advantage from this leadership race. As we've discussed before, the NDP tends to underperform the polls. So the fact that they're averaging 9 maybe means they get 7 in an election that would be happening today. So he's starting from scratch. He's starting from the base.
Yes, he is, and also let's not forget. Right now, if you look at the projections, I had the NDP back up at 6 on average, but the average has been between 4 and 6, and so lower than the 7 they had. The main reason is seats. Yes, the main reason is that right now they're not having the vote splits that they need to recover. Because the Liberals have been dominant. Now, I mean, if the Léger numbers in BC are confirmed, and we have a new trend that it's much tighter in BC than it had been in recent weeks, perhaps it would go back up. But they can't count on that. They have to find a way to get back into the conversation. What you just said, however, to your point, Eric, like a lot of serious things will happen in the next few weeks and months. As you said, next week, by-elections that sometimes they don't matter and they are overblown in their importance. These ones matter.
These actually matter.
These matter a lot.
Like usually we're like they matter because they show big trends and stuff. These they literally matter. Who wins them matters, which is unusual.
Yeah. It's very unusual. And the Rosemont, La Petite Patrie rumors that there will be a by-election because M. Boulris would quit or would leave the NDP. That has not been confirmed, but it has not been quelled either. And so we would have another by-election before the summer break. So these by-elections will matter a whole lot. We have wars, multiple wars going on. We have the economy's hurting. The prices of everything goes up because of gas. Most of it is from outside sources. It's not because we don't have infrastructure in Canada that's working. It's because of world events. But still, sometimes when voters are angry, it doesn't matter the reason. They will be angry at the government, and they don't need you can say, oh, well, it's actually because of this and this. If they're angry, they will show it at the ballot box or at least in public opinion polls. So it's going to be a tough test. This first year for Mark Carney, and I'm not saying it has been easy, but he's been riding a bit of a wave in two acts. This second year for Mark Carney that's just starting, is going to be a lot tougher. And I, as you said, I wonder if Monsieur Lewis can really take back a chunk of voters that went to the Liberals, because there are left of center voters that went to the Liberals last year. In the polls right now, it looks like they're still backing the Liberals. But new leader, new approach. Will he be? He's not inside the House, so perhaps he won't have the visibility of an MP. But this could mean a whole lot going forward.
You said when voters are angry. I think that what has been to Carney's advantage is that so far they're not so much angry as they are worried, uncertain, maybe a bit scared, right? And so when that happens, the government in place, if it's run by someone who is exuding a little bit of confidence and that he's got it under control, that's working for now, right? As long as that kind of attitude is prevailing, that people are a bit uncertain and they want someone who seems steady, Carney's in a good spot. If that transitions into people are getting upset and things aren't going well and they don't like the direction of where things are heading, that's where it starts to get problematic. And that's where you could see more support for more out-of-the-box thinking, which could be from Pierre Poilievre on some of the policies he's put forward, or from Avi Lewis on some of the ones that he's put forward, which are certainly out of the box, is even from the NDP standards. What I found was really interesting, on Monday, he did a series of interviews. The one I saw was he did ones on power and politics and power play.
Yeah.
It's different to have someone like Avi Lewis as leader of the NDP. He is a good talker. He is quick on his feet. He's got an answer for everything. I was thinking about one of the issues that Jagmeet Singh had, especially in the last few years, is that his approach would often be that the NDP really believes in A and the NDP really believes in B. And the follow-up usually was, well, A plus B equals C, so do you believe in C? And he would say, the NDP really believes in A and really believes in B. Here, what you have with Avi Lewis is that even when someone has a pretty good follow-up, one of them from Vashi Kapelas, his line was that he really wants to see Nad Nenshi and Carla Beck become premiers. She said, doesn't seem like they want you to become prime minister. He was still able to kind of roll with that punch. So that is a different energy that we haven't seen from the NDP.
Yeah.
Since Tom Mulcair or Jack Layton, when you had people who were effective communicators who could think pretty quickly on their feet. I'm curious to see what that is going to do for the party. Lewis got a lot of attention over the last few days, but he has to be able to maintain it.
And that's tough.
And you know what? I hear a lot of New Democrats say, well, when you're the third party, like,
no, you're the fourth party.
You're the fourth party.
Sorry.
You're not. So, you really need to get some attention. And I don't know how successful he'll be in the medium term. Because in the short term, after you win a leadership race, you get a lot of attention. But, the NDP has a lot of work ahead of them. And, Pierre Poilievre is thinking about where he should, if he should donate to the Conservative Party this year. Maybe he wants to give his money over to the NDP instead, just to give them a little boost. Because, boy, oh boy, do the Conservatives need a strong NDP.
They do, and they don't want. Many don't want to admit it out loud, but they do. The NDP has to break that if the Liberals stay at 45, oh my God, it's going to be so difficult for the Conservatives to reach that. We discussed last year, you and I, we thought, I think, that the Carney coalition that he built for the election was less solid than what Poilievre built. It was fewer voters, but it seems like the Conservative coalition has a better chance of sticking together. Right now, thing is, 1 year later, we have Léger poll that have the Conservatives at 34, and we have Nanos 32, Abacus, 37, it's a bit better. It's the Conservatives who have lost support in the past year. That I did not expect that. And also, if I can go back, Eric, just to you mentioned the Abacus poll. The leader numbers have softened a bit, but they're still pretty advantageous to the Prime Minister. So Mark Carney, 51% of positive impressions or favorable, 30% negative. Now, that 30% negative, you would think are mostly Conservative voters. That's a plus 21. If you look at Pierre Poilievre, 39% positive, roughly the Conservative base, 43% negative, so that's a minus 4. That's one of the better polls for Monsieur Poilievre when you look at the personal numbers. So I'm looking at this because Abacus has a rhythm of about one poll every 2-3 weeks. So we have a roller, or we have a rolling data. Perhaps Monsieur Poilievre's numbers could improve, and if that's the case, we should then expect the Conservatives to recover a little bit. So sometimes one set of data leads the other, but I'll look forward to that.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the Nanos tracker has softened a bit after 4 consecutive weeks of the Liberals going up, 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 up. Now it has gone back down a little bit. It's still a 15-point lead, so it's still big. They'll take it. Mr. Carney at 55% for preferred premier, 23 for Poilievre. Poilievre has been stuck in the low 20s for since January, I think. It's been 25, 24, 22. So little movement there. It seems to be this is spanning the whole month of March. So that's it for the federal polls.
And it'll be the last one we see without Avi Lewis in.
That's right.
It'll take 4 weeks because the way that Nanos does it, for the next 4 weeks, for next week, it'll be 3 weeks of Davies, 1 week of Lewis, and then it'll be 2 weeks of Davies, 2 weeks of Lewis. So we'll get an indication how much of that 55 for Carney was people from the NDP saying, well, there's no NDP option that's a serious one. So we'll see if that's going to change. If in 2 months we still see Carney at 50 plus, then the other parties have some issues.
Okay, Eric, you published on the RIT.ca, excellent website, data on the second choice of NDP voters. Would you like to go through this? Because I saw your post, I read it, thought it was great, but I don't think I know all the details. So what does the data tell us about the second choices of NDP voters?
So this came by way of one of the leadership campaigns. That's all that I will say. Okay. This was data that was calculated. So the NDP had this, which they needed to. Because it was a first ballot victory, we don't know how any of the voters actually ranked their ballot. Who ranked Lewis second? Who ranked McPherson second? That kind of thing. But this breakdown actually contained that information. So we do have a good idea of how each candidate's voters saw the other candidate. So I'll go through some of the numbers here. What was really interesting is that there was this perception that Lewis was a bit of a polarizing figure, that the Heather McPherson, Rob Ashton kind of voters were, really polarized against Avi Lewis. What we see instead is that he was actually a pretty broad consensus second choice as well. 35% of Heather McPherson voters ranked Avi Lewis second. It was 26% among Rob Ashton's voters. Tenniel Johnston's, half of them put Avi Lewis second, and 37% of Tony McQuail's voters put Lewis second. It was only among Ashton voters that Heather McPherson was the top second choice. So in an alternate universe where Lewis doesn't win on the first ballot and Ashton does a lot better, his second choices could have helped her. But what we see from this is that Lewis had enough second ballot support from all of the other candidates that even if he had ended up with, say, 47 or something like that on the first ballot, he would have easily won. What the numbers also show is that Rob Ashton really didn't do very well. And it's really kind of surprising how badly he did. Really, one of the things that we heard was that people were like, well, he's everybody's kind of second choice. So if he can hang around, he'll get a lot of second choice. The numbers do not show that he was everybody's second choice. He was usually people's third or fourth.
Wow.
He really did struggle. And it's kind of it brings up the question of the role of labor within the NDP, how much of a power they still had, whether they saw him as their greatest vehicle. But just the numbers kind of show that there wasn't really as much polarization between the candidates as we might have thought. 36% of Lewis voters put McPherson second. So it kind of shows that, there wasn't anybody but Lewis or anybody but McPherson if you're from the left wing of the party. So the numbers really are kind of, they're not really surprising because with these one member, one votes, when it's not delegated, voters tend to organize themselves differently than we might think. But it is fascinating to see the breakdown.
It's also, when I look at these tables, Eric, as you just said, there was no anybody but Lewis movement, basically. Mm-hmm. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
So among McPherson voters, so 35% would have gone Lewis on their second choice. And then Johnson and Ashton are tied with 20% each. So, yeah, maybe there was not that that connection that was maybe overblown. And again, I said that on the convention floor in our special episode. The divisions within the NDP there are some, of course, and there were many also divisions in the Conservative convention. But I think it's been overblown. Lewis was a pretty consensual pick, 56% of first place votes. And when I look at this, he was the second choice of most voters except Ashton. So and he still got 26% among Ashton voters. So
yeah, and he had what was interesting is that the numbers showed how many ballots included the candidates, because you didn't need to rank all of them.
Oh, okay.
23% of McPherson voters did not put anybody second. They just put McPherson 1. That was it.
That's it.
19% of Lewis voters did the same. So that was more than any of the other candidates. So you did see that those two front runners, their supporters were more likely just to rank them. Maybe also understanding that they were never going to drop off, so it didn't matter if you ranked anybody else. But Lewis was on 86% of ballots. So 86% of members ranked him somewhere, either 1 to 5. That was more than anybody else. So you do see that more of the NDP's voters were willing to consider him in some way. So you didn't have a huge chunk of McPherson voters, for example, who did not rank Lewis at all, or Ashton voters who did not rank Lewis at all. So again, it just kind of shows that his support within the party, the membership of the party, is pretty strong. And while 56 is a big result, it's not like Nad Nenchi's 80 plus.
Yeah.
The remaining 44% weren't totally against him. I kind of tried to game it out. Unfortunately, it wasn't like a flow chart. I did see, the results did show who Ashton voters ranked third, for example, or fourth or fifth. So you could kind of play it out a little bit, but you don't know who, if you ranked Ashton second, did you rank McPherson third? Or
right.
You couldn't do it that way.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, if you played it out, I think you probably would have went to a 65-35 final ballot result kind of thing. Based on what the numbers show, which wouldn't be all that different from his Lewis's margin of victory. Like if there was a super strong anybody but Lewis result, and you played it out to the final ballot where there's only two candidates, maybe he wouldn't grow that much. But he actually did have a lot of room to grow because, as I said, he had a lot of support, particularly among Johnston and McQuail voters. There does seem to have been more of a link between those three, and McPherson and Ashton on the other side, but a lot of crossover nevertheless.
Should we, before we move off this, Eric, should we just mention our over-unders?
Sure.
So we had a line at 60% for Monsieur Lewis, which, by the way, he agreed to. He thought it was a good line.
He told us that.
I guess he listens to the podcast. Hello. But he had 56, so you took the under, I took the over. The line was pretty good.
It was pretty good.
So you take that line. Our line for McPherson, what did it end up being? Was it 25%?
It was 25, yeah.
It was 25, and she had 29, right?
Yeah, 29.5.
And
I took the over on that.
You took the over, so you got it. That's 2-0 for you. And Ashton, the line was 13%.
Yeah.
That was our worst line, actually. I really thought he would do better than this. I thought he would be comfortably in third place, but nope, that was not the case. I took the under. You took the over, so I get the point. For Johnson, what did we... I don't remember.
We only did 3.
And you took the over.
I took the over. She got 7.
Oh, okay. So, you're really beating me here.
Yeah.
And
I got those 3, and then McQuail I'd put at 2.5.
And you under.
And you took the under. So, yes, it was 3-2 for me.
Okay, that's okay.
I've swept all the NDP leadership contests that we did.
That's right.
As we recall, you chose in your draft not a single one that was on the ballot, and I had
there was no draft.
McPherson and Lewis. So.
That was AI or something.
I will take your congratulations.
Congratulations, Eric. Bravo. Because the NDP, I grew up in Quebec. The NDP was just foreign to me, so that's why I don't know anything. Okay.
Excuses.
All right, Eric. There was a Quebec poll.
Yes, let's talk about it. It's a big one.
It's a big one. So we had. So while we were in Winnipeg, there was a report on TVA, the TV station owned by Québécois, that Jean-Marc Léger had appeared on the news, basically saying, "Oh, since the Iran war started, we fielded a Quebec poll every week just to see how it would change among voters. Now, obviously, there's more happening in Quebec than just news about the Huron War, but it's still a big thing. And Léger decided to, on Monday, release the full tables of the voting intentions in Quebec for the last poll, which was fielded from March 20th to 22, so like 10 days ago. And the results, my friend, 33% for the Parti Québécois, mostly stable, around the average that they had for about 2 years. 33% for the Quebec Liberals, up among Francophones, up in Montreal, doing okay in Quebec City, although they're still a distant third. 15% for the Conservatives, same as last month. 9% for the CAQ, Eric. The worst poll of any firm for the CAQ since its creation in November 2011. That's 15 years. And 9% for Québec Solidaire, also stable there. I'd like to get into this. I did a lot of media about this. I was asked a lot of questions. It was all that was leaked, by the way. We didn't have sovereignty numbers or satisfaction numbers. It was just voting intentions with the tables of regions and demographic data. Eric, what's your take on these numbers from Léger in Quebec?
Well, the take is simple. This race is now a race. Now, it's true that, we'll get into it with the lead that the PQ has among Francophones. They are still very strongly favored to win the most seats. But it's starting to get to the point where it doesn't need to move that much, where suddenly you get into toss-up territory and certainly minority territory. And I looked at it, if I'm not mistaken, this is the first time that the Liberals have led or tied for the lead in a poll since 2018.
Yeah, that's right.
Which is a long time ago, and it's the last time they were in office. So this is a huge result for them. And it'll matter. Whether or not it's true, whether or not the trends hold. Like I posted it in the Discord, but I always look at the news in what's happening in the Gaspésie, and there was a story about how there's a lot of interest in running for the Liberals in the Gaspé-Bonaventure riding that's going to be created.
Really?
That is not something that you would have thought. You would have heard about the Quebec Liberals only a few months ago, that there is interest in running in a region where the party is not very strong. So I think that'll have a big impact. Fundraising doesn't matter as much in Quebec because there's only $100 limit, but candidates now it's not just, you live in Montreal, you have a good shot of becoming an MNA. Now it's like, you know what? Maybe if I have a bit of my own kind of support that I can bring to the table, I could maybe become elected as a Liberal outside of Montreal, outside of some of the traditional areas of support. So that, I think, is going to have a big impact on the fortunes for the party and their ability to recruit, get some more volunteers, organizers, all that kind of stuff over the next 6 months.
Here's a question I got asked many times, both on TV and on radio, and I would like to have your hot answer, because this is not scripted, my friends. Eric, is the PQ blowing this? There you go. That's the right answer, actually. That's the right answer, actually.
I feel like it's a little bit like the Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. They didn't really blow it. They just lost it. There's a difference here, because the PQ support hasn't really shifted all that much. It's just that they've lost their advantage because the Liberals have been able to do better. Okay, they're not at 35-38 anymore, so they are blowing it a little bit. But some of this is out of their control. How is the PQ going to prevent Federalist CAQ voters from going over to the Liberals?
Well, here's how. They don't promise for 3 straight years they're going to have a hasty referendum right after the election. That's how you would do it. But I'm not criticizing the PQ strategy here. I mean, they got from 14% to the mid-30s by promising a referendum. So obviously they would go with what works. It's just that, okay, so we mentioned when Pablo Rodriguez, remember him, had this little saga in late fall. The PQ had really good polls, like 39 for the PQ from Léger in late November. There was a 36 from Palas Dalla. There was a 40 from the English Read Institute. But this was higher than usual. Mm-hmm. So the polls in Quebec since the new year, we've had 6 polls for the PQ. 34, 31, 32, 30, 31, and now this Léger has 33. So they haven't really moved. They really have a strong support from their base. The base is solid, but their base is not incredibly big either. Like the third of the vote is good. It's just that we could be entering a phase of high polarization. The Liberals in December, 20% from Léger.
Yeah.
Then 24, 26, 26, 27, 30, and 33. Man, like this could be something. Because, okay, the Liberals have... You mentioned the Francophone votes. This is really, really important for those who follow the polls in Quebec. Yes, it's a tie, but where the vote is distributed matters a whole lot. And among Francophone voters, it's 41 Parti Québécois, 23 Liberals. So that's 18 points. That's not very close. It's just that it's the second consecutive Léger poll that has the Liberals high up, growing among Francophones beyond the margin of error. This is a jump of 4 points among Francophones, mostly at the expense of the CEQ. And then it got me thinking, when was the last time the Liberals were around 23% among Francophones? It's been a while. Like in 2018, the Liberals won 31 seats in their defeat. They had 25% of a vote province-wide. So they were probably around 18 or 17% among Francophones. 23% among Francophones, yeah, you don't win, in the deeper, more Francophone rural regions, but there are some seats that could be available that we did not foresee, especially in the greater Montreal area. These are the Montreal numbers, Eric. 44 Liberal, up 4 points. 27% Parti Québécois. That's a 17-point lead for the Quebec Liberals. That's not only the island. That's the 450, the 450.
Suburbs around the island, yeah.
Yeah, so getting very interesting. If I were to bet today, I'd still bet for the Parti Québécois, but it's not a sure bet anymore.
Would you bet for a majority?
Yeah, here's the thing. So to have a minority, you need strong third parties, right? Or a very, very close result.
Yeah.
Québec Solidaire should be able to hold on to 4, 5, maybe 6 seats. I don't think more than that, but I don't think fewer than that also. And the Quebec Conservatives, Monsieur Duhem, the leader of the Conservatives, is on social media every month saying, oh, we progressed so much. Yeah, you had 13 in the election, you had 15 now. So it's not progression, but at least they're stable. They're stable in an environment where, I did a top 10 of all the 10 best conservative results last time around. They were all won by the CEQ. It was a clean sweep of the CEQ. Now the CEQ is not even competitive anymore. So they will win seats. How many? 7, 8, 9, 10, 12? If they win only 6 or 7, it's going to be hard to have a minority. But if they win 12, well, look out.
Yeah, because if you combine the QS and the Conservatives and say they win 15 together, now to get a majority, you need to win 63 out of 110 seats. Like that starts to get a little bit more difficult. And the regional numbers are interesting because the Liberals have a big lead, as you mentioned, in the Montreal region. The PQ has a big lead in the regions of Quebec, but it's almost a mirror image, right? Like there's the PQ lead outside of the two big cities is roughly as big as the Liberal lead in Montreal.
Right.
And the fact also that the Liberals are at 22 in second place in the region.
Yeah.
How long ago were they at 5? Or something like that. Like I looked at it, the recent low, the Liberals had the 20% in a mid-December poll. If I'm not mistaken, I think they had 11% support among Francophones. So they've gone up quite a bit. Like a lot of their gains have been almost entirely among Francophones. They're at 61% among non-Francophones. That really hasn't changed all that much.
Exactly.
So all their gains are coming in among the electorate that matters for winning seats, because the Liberals are already going to win all the Anglophone or Allophone majority ridings, likely. But this is just like... How long have we been talking about how one of the biggest challenges that Mark Carney or Pierre Poilievre, when he was leading the polls, was going to face was a Quebec referendum? Now it's like, wait a minute. Yeah. This election is
It's not done yet.
It's not done yet. It's anybody's... I wouldn't say it's anybody's to take, but if the PQ doesn't win a majority, referendum kind of goes off the table as well. So, yeah, this year could turn out to be a lot different than we thought it was for a number of different reasons, right? We've got that Carney majority that seems to be coming down the pike, and now maybe the PQ majority isn't coming down the pike, and what is that going to do? Is this the big question? Is this trend line, which has been so positive for the Liberals, when does it stop? Has it stopped? Yeah. That's the question here, right?
There's a ceiling. There's a ceiling. Yeah.
Because if they went up to 30, let's say the next poll they're at 35, where did that come from? Where did they get 2 more points? It's tough to see with the numbers for the other parties.
The warm corpse of the CAQ. Like, okay, so I know I'm not making light of this. This is
how warm it is, but
yeah. I don't know. It feels like I'm making light of this, but you remember last year when we first had Quebec projections that showed 0 seat. There was still a confidence interval. Mm-hmm. You know, okay, they could be competitive in a dozen seat, and then it was like, okay, maybe 5 or 6 seats. I updated with these numbers, and the confidence intervals for the CAQ is from 0 to 0. They're not competitive anywhere. They're not leading in any demographics, in any region, and in any sub-region. And the CAQ, which I know many people, I've talked to many of these people over the years, obviously they were in government, they have not pushed back on my projection. They go like, yeah, well, we're going to work hard, and there's a new leader coming, so we don't know. But we are getting closer to the election. It's getting less and less hypothetical, Eric, that the CAQ could go from 90 seats to 0. And we haven't had that in Quebec ever. I mean, even the Union Nationale took a few elections to be destroyed. I wrote my column this morning, L'Actualité, is like, look at the regions for the CAQ. What were the strongholds, and where could they keep their seats? Well, many of the strongholds were places like Arthabasca, which was for the CAQ before the CAQ took power. And they got blown to bits last summer in the by-election. Another hotspot was Chicoutimi, where the lady, Madame Laforêt, had 62% of the vote, like 45 points ahead of competition. They got blown away to bits. In Chicoutimi, they lost 50 points. So what kind of swing are we talking about here? Like, which riding, if they had 40% of riding, do we have a chance to keep it? Given that on average they lost 3/4 of their vote, it's over.
Yeah,
it's over.
And also a lot of their more popular MNAs or cabinet ministers aren't running again for re-election, right? So they don't even get that benefit.
That's going to be something. I mean, it would take a fool to really make a strong prediction right now. I've had people saying, "Oh, the Liberals have got this." Like, yeah. Charles Milliard just got here. He hasn't made a big false step, un faux pas, make big errors so far. He will. He's going to get pressed by media. It's going to happen. It's just that how much will they like the guy enough to give him the keys? Again, the Parti Québécois, it's still leading in the projections and is favorable. It has a higher ceiling than the Liberals. But a bad campaign, it could change everything, especially in Quebec where voters are fickle. So,
All right. Should we move to the number of the week?
We absolutely should.
All right. Would
you
you
go
like
first.
to go first? Me? I got to go first?
Yeah, go first. Yeah, go first.
I'll just, it's not an unoriginal one, or original one, but I'll take 56%. That's what Avi Lewis got on the first ballot. That was the thing we were all looking to see this coming week. What would be the scale of the victory? We know that there are some dissent within the party, but as we talked about with the second choice, that dissent is largely in the provincial sections rather than the federal party. And I think that the fact that he did manage to get a very solid first ballot victory kind of silences critics that could come out of the woodwork saying that he did not have the support of the federal NDP. I think that victory kind of shows that he doesn't. But we were talking about Pierre Poilievre hoping for a good NDP result. It is kind of strange that Avi Lewis got nicer remarks from Pierre Poilievre, the conservative leader on social media, than he did from two of his provincial party leaders in Nancy and Carlebec. So we'll see. But first mission accomplished for Avi Lewis.
And that David Eby congratulations was very polite, right?
Yeah,
so I'm going with the Léger poll here. So do you approve or disapprove of the performance of Mark Carney's government so far? We mentioned this earlier with the satisfaction numbers. It's similar. Approve 58, disapprove 33. Among NDP voters, now we know it's a smaller sample, but it's 54 approve, 36 disapprove. So among NDPers right now, the Carney government has a plus 18 net approval. This is a number I will watch because, again, this was the last poll before the Lewis era, the Lewis 2.0, I guess we would call it, era.
3.0.
So, we could say that. So next month, or even this summer, when we have those newer polls with Monsieur Lewis, will NDPers get some less satisfied with the current government because now they feel like they have a better option? A number to watch over the next few months.
And for viewers and listeners of the podcast, next week, just a little programming note: our regular episode will be up on Wednesday because. Hey, we're now on the convention circuit.
Another convention, that's right.
We're going to the one in Montreal, so I'm going to be traveling on Thursday. So we're going to have the episode up a day early. And if you're going to be, well, we'll talk about the convention next week. But actually, next week we're going to probably dive down on what to expect in those 3 by-elections, which everybody's going to be watching. And of course, we're going to do a live stream that night. The longest ballot committee has only 40-ish candidates, so maybe it won't be so bad.
Slackers.
Won't be too slow, but we'll see. Anyway, Philippe, it was really fun to hang out at the convention, and it's always fun to hang out with our viewers, our members, our listeners. If you want to support the podcast, go to thenumberspod.ca, get ad-free, early access to the episodes, all the bonus episodes. We did one from the convention, so just thanks for all your support. And Philippe, have a good weekend, and we'll chat next week.
Merci beaucoup, Eric. Now that I'm thick of it, we have to find our way to go to a block convention to make the full slate. Well, I guess the Greens will have to do. But anyway, merci beaucoup, Eric. Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend.